first understand more about the problem and the solution. I think when we think about startups, we always think about what's the problem that this startup is trying to solve. So when you had the idea to launch this project, what was the need in the market? So what were the pain points and how did you come up with this solution?
Yeah, I think the very problem statement that we see right now is about late diagnosis, right? So if we see, even in marathons, people already wearing Garmin, they already wear like the most advanced smartwatches out there, but you can still see people collapsing in the marathon. Like in the recent Hong Kong Standard Chartered Marathon, they have around 500 actually collapsed, right? And then 2 are actually critical that they need to be escorted to hospitals. I think these kind of like supposed to be like a very healthy, fun event, but somehow people can still be overforcing themselves, overexerting themselves, which end up getting injured, and they need to recover for maybe 6 months, right? So that's coming from the consumer side. But even when we see the hospital side in ICU care, so we have a chat with clinical hospitals, or even in the ICU, there are a lot of cases where the doctors or the nurses, because you can imagine in ICU they have to manage a lot of patients in one place, right? And then okay, sure, you can wear heart rate, you can wear the oxygenation, saturation oxygen sensor, but sometimes for the blood biomarkers, they need to draw blood frequently, right? And of course, maybe 2-3 nurses managing like 15 to 20 patients. In fact, I think that's sometimes where you see a lot of the cases where they delay on picking up the spike of the biomarkers, and then one thing led to another, and then essentially cause CKD, like the disease that essentially on the end stage of the renal disease. So essentially, if you have something scalable to monitor the biomarkers, essentially similar like when the 2000s, where before you can't monitor heart rate, but now you can. I think this is where the problem that we're trying to bridge in bringing in those more data, so for the nurses to monitor in such a scalable ways and be alerted before the dangerous level of the biomarker spiking.
And what is the uniqueness of the technology that you developed? What did you bring up to the market that didn't exist before?
Yeah, I think there are twofold of the technology side. Essentially, first is the material itself. So essentially, the sweat patch that we have it here. So essentially, this is based on the advanced material that was developed for over 10-15 years with me and my professor, like Professor Cal from Hong Kong USD. I think that's definitely one on how we can collect the sweat. Because before, if you want to collect the biomarkers, usually you need needles, right? So that's where the first key innovation. And secondly is on the proprietary sweat database that we've been collecting. Because now, after we have the ways to collect it, now like how can we process the data, right? So how we can make sure, because the thing with sweat is very different with blood, because blood for every individual will have similar properties, like the pH is going to be the same, the concentration is going to be the same. But with sweat, even different people have different sweat rate, right? So that's things really, really matters on how you can tackle this problem. So if you don't have this, it's highly unlikely you actually can provide a very accurate measurements. So that's essentially what we've been collecting in Hong Kong, and then in Europe. That's why we're launching several pilots with several national institutes in France, as well hopefully in the US. So that way we can have different demographics of data, because not even talking about just one particular population. It would be different, talking with different demographics or different physiology as well. I think that's the two key differences in both that we have.
So you mentioned about entering other markets, and I saw you have one of the slides comparing your solution with other companies providing similar related solutions. Can you explain to us again about how do you position your business in relation to your direct competitors? What's the difference?
Yeah, I think the difference, like we are capturing what we call biomarkers, because the other wearables, they only do heart rate, oxygenation, and steps, right? So these three are a very, if you think of it as like a surface, this is like a very outer surface of reading from our body, right? But if you see your heart rate increases, you can think of, okay, when you run, you're gonna see your heart rate spike for sure, right? But actually, when you drink alcohol, it's also gonna pace up your heart rate, right? So there's no specificity to tell, okay, what's happening with your body. Is it you're running or you're just finishing from a huge sprint? Like for example, I'm wearing Apple Watch sometimes when I'm drinking at night, they're actually thinking I'm exercising, right? So this kind of thing, like they thought because alcohol, like you're drinking a lot of, I don't know, vodka, whiskey, it pace up your heart rate as well. So while the wearables think that you're burning calories, might as well you're actually gaining more calories from drinking beers, right? So I think this kind of thing, like a very faulty and limitation when you detect it from the outer surface. But if you detecting the biomarker itself from the body, it's something that will tell us much more specific of what's happening in the body. So I think that's where.
Can you tell us this is available for us, consumers here in Macau or Hong Kong, or we need to buy this?
So right now we're at the scaling up processes. So the hardest challenge, like since is scaling up this material. This sweatband itself is quite unique. So right now we're at that stage, and we've already got a lot of orders from the professionals first, and also we want to start with there because essentially they are the one gonna drive the market as well, right? So it's similar playbook with other wearables because with the consumers, because what we think we're selling is not only about selling the health wearable, we're selling trust as well, right? With the thing with health device, like you will use it if you trust it's accurate, and the easiest way to see it's accurate if say the professionals are using it. If LeBron is wearing it, if say Michael Phelps are wearing it, that tells itself that okay, this device is good, right? So I think that's where we also want to start with. So we go with the professionals, the athletes, all those high performance people. Because if you think about it, if you you just see like people breaking the sub 2 marathon yesterday, right? The guy, like it's very, very impossible for you performing like that if your body is not, if every single cell in your body is not healthy. So that's essentially where we think about it. Of course, more people want to forward as much as possible. I'm not saying that I don't want to train like the athlete as well myself, but at least we know that's a good benchmark of healthy body. So that's where we're going to start with it.
So the athletes, they wear these continuously, right?
Yes, exactly. So right now they can wear this because right now when they need to prick testing what we call lactate, they need to either prick fingers in the ears or in the fingertips, which means they need to stop. Right, so, but we otherwise you can monitor continuously while you do exercise.
You also wear this every day?
No. Usually just for my run.
No, only. So
Yeah.
it lasts for.
This one can last. This one can last for 10 hours. So essentially, usually we recommend for the athletes usually how they wear it during training first right now. Because when you want to use it for competitions, for training, for race, it really depends on federations rules as well. So sometimes, like for example, the UCI, like the cycling federation, they already banned using the CGM for glucose. They thought it's like a very performance enhancement and so on. But if you think of it from the safety angle, that's probably a chance there. So we'll start with training.
So I'm thinking, do you think these biosensors and AI related with it, how will it change the daily life of common people like us?
Yeah, I think first thing first, AI, even from our team, we having heavily used and accelerated our development using AI in the sense like how we provide, because we collect the data from this hardware, but how we then translate it into insights that people can understand is the AI that helping us to do that, right? So first thing, if like how we translate the data to the users, that's definitely a lot of boost from the AI. And secondly, we are developing something that providing a unique proprietary training data for the AI itself, right? So if you see all the health startups or companies, they usually train based on, say, blood data or any data that's already available right now, right? From hospitals, CT scan, if you want to. So essentially how it works usually like you train, okay, this is the CT scan that's having cancer, and then you train in the AI, and the AI can tell next time, okay, when you see this kind of patterns, you need to flag this as a cancer, right? So right now, they don't have the training data for this dangerous biomarkers that can prevent people from collapsing, for example. Or in the ICU, if you see lactate spiking, that tells your organ is not having enough oxygen. So this kind of thing, they don't have the training data yet. So that's what we're bringing in. So it definitely takes a lot of time for us to collect the data, but that's also acting as a defensive mode from our side in this AI era. Because nowadays, we have so much language model that's become much smarter. Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, they all have their own language models. So we don't need to compete with that. So they essentially later on we just choose which one has the best model to interpret our data. We're focusing more on getting what the biomarkers itself.
So this health tech industry is growing fast, right? It's one of those that is projected to grow more in the next few years. You are particularly in these biosensors and AI diagnostics. Where do you think are the major trends in Asia in the next few years?
I think the major trends would, so when I got back from the CES as well, so we had a lot of very interesting conversations with people from Garmin, Meta. I think first, these days they are entering the, as I said before, era of biology. So with the technology right now, with the AI, it definitely allows us to accelerate what we can know about our body. So not only about heart rate, but actually about what's the biomarkers that you normally need in hospital, right? So the very clear indicators of this shift essentially later on when you used to go to the blood lab test maybe every 6 months, you can get about your glucose measurements. Now you can get it almost every day at home, right? I think that's really like a very clear shift. And now more and more biomarkers that will be more accessible with that we're bringing from our device that will help people to shift how their routine is. Like say for example, stress hormone, cortisol, right? So how you can use stress hormones, like how you, if your stress hormone is high, you start sleeping less. That's where you need to know, okay, my circadian rhythm needs to change. So I need to sleep earlier, for example. I need to reduce alcohol consumption. So this kind of thing really changed on the daily shift of how it then impacting the stress hormone itself, right? So essentially, this kind of trends will be more and more apparent later on on how we live our daily life. And even the interface will also be changing from phone, like, of course, right now we're still the smartwatch itself is already one example when before you need to wear a phone to see all the data, but now you can sometimes see from your Garmin watch, right? And right now it's like smart glasses, right? So when we're talking with Meta, also they make their AR glasses, they also finding use cases, right? So right now they partner with Oakley to have the smart glasses for runners, for cyclists, and they want to project our data onto their glasses as well. So that's a very clear use case how now we don't need to see their bike, our meter as well, but they can just see from their glasses, okay, you're already reaching your zone 3, which is like the danger zone, you're gonna slow down. So this kind of real-time feedback is essentially already like a very clear impact on how knowing about the biomarkers can shape your human activity.
So you mentioned about data, and you also mentioned trust. So this raises questions about privacy, ethics, regulation. What are your thoughts about this perspective of the business?
Yeah, I think for us in PointPet, how we solve this is like when we do trials, we have an anonymized database, so we don't collect the name of the subject who's having this data. Obviously, it's very sensitive issue. Not to mention those athletes, like when we're working with the one cycling team, they will definitely tell, oh, but you can't tell my athletes' data to share with the other teams, right? Because I mean, otherwise they will know how much they can win, how much they lose, right? So we always have it anonymized, and then even later on from in the consumer, we have a clear opt-ins, like for if you guys want to have your account, or you want to have your name or initials, because for us, we want to make sure all the health data is being stored privately. And of course, if you want to share that later on to your medical partners or doctors, yes, you can, but obviously it needs to be consented either ways. So we'll have a very clear opt-ins, like there's no data sharing without the user's consent. And then, and how we then still train our model then, right? So then we implement what we call the federated machine learning. So we don't need to know who the data is, like who's this data belongs to, what is data. So essentially we just observe the general trends of the population. So essentially the users from Hong Kong, the user from France, the user from Portugal, we just take like a very general basis of the average of the sort of like the data, like what's the sweat rate looks like, what's the physiology in the winter, what the physiology looks like in summer. Then that's why we still use the trainer model, but we will not have access to, okay, whose is this data belongs to. I think that's how we can also cater to the GDPR as well in Europe, because everyone's definitely need to make sure that all the data have been protected well, and of course the privacy is being upheld very much. So yeah,
It's amazing, right? So you have been in Hong Kong for how many years?
So I was born and raised in Jakarta, Indonesia, and then I moved to Hong Kong in 2015. So for my college, and then started out this in 2019. So I've been on for 11 years.
It's amazing, right? So you arrived in Hong Kong 11 years ago. You do your bachelor degree, your master degree. You start at least 2 companies, right? Would this be possible to happen in other city in Asia, or why did you choose Hong Kong? Did you choose Hong Kong with a target to start a company? So
No, actually no.
what happened in Hong Kong that allowed you to have this direction?
Right. So to be honest, when I first moved from Jakarta, when I decided which college I want to go to, usually in Indonesia it's either Hong Kong or Singapore, right? So back then I just chose Hong Kong because Singapore, it just feels like it's still in Southeast Asia. There's not much different with Indonesia. Like weather-wise, like it's just gonna be raining or summer. It's quite boring. So in Hong Kong we have more, variations. Like there's winter. There's summer is obviously very, very hot, but I can experience winter. And then in terms of the environments, experience of living is definitely something much rather newer. And then I see how China's been advancing rapidly in 2015, right? So back then I just think like if I'm in Hong Kong, I have more exposures to new things in terms of the market development. Because Singapore, yes, they're probably the most advanced in Southeast Asia, but no one competes what's happening in the China GBA area, right? So, and then I chose Hong Kong. And then if you ask me if what's happening in Hong Kong, that whether I can do it different analysis, I don't think so. Because what I feel that, and what I've been seeing for the past 5-6 years as well, like how Hong Kong GBA area, how they nurture projects not only from the lab, it's very, very amazing. So, for example, when I do my final year project, right? So, back then, most people they just do this for being graduate. For like you make your dissertation, your thesis, so that you can finish your graduation checklist. Done, right? That's it. But in Hong Kong, there are a lot of ecosystem, I'd say, that actually encourage people to think bigger. Like, okay, so now you do this research, what for, right? So can you use this for actual usage? And they're not only asking me to think about that, but they also give some small fund, which back then, I remember my first fund is like $15,000 Hong Kong dollars. Back then, it's a huge money that what I'm gonna use with this money, right? Like, I can buy. Even back then, they giving me a very good habit. Okay, you need to document every expenses you need to purchase, which now I think of that as like it's actually a good practice, right? So, if you want to buy this, if there's like you want to buy something more than 5,000, you have to find quotations. Like you have to find 2 quotations to see that actually makes sense. So now I can understand, okay, it's not about the money, but actually thinking whether you're getting a good price for your purchases, right? So I think these kind of small things that really nurtured Hong Kong students, Macau, or people in GBA area to think how they should run business, how they should think even when they're doing research, it's not only for the thesis writing, but actually for making the product that can be used for people. I think that's something that I observe, and it's been growing significantly with the Hong Kong Science Park, Hang Chin, the TCM Park here. I think this kind of habit, this kind of like ecosystem is, I think, is very, very special. And I don't see this in Singapore. In Singapore, they don't have like much government grant-based accelerators like Hong Kong Science Park, Cyberport. In Singapore, it's all private. So similar to in the US and Silicon Valley, they all basically like YC, Y Combinator. All yes, you can get more access capital in the Silicon Valley, but when you think about starting up, obviously, especially from the researchers, because I don't have any business background at all. My parents were just engineers. They're even like, when I first started out, there are questions like, okay, when are you gonna get a real job? Right? I was like, this could be a real job, right? So they are very, very not accustomed with startups. So I think being exposed to the ecosystem, even when you're still on campus, I think is a very game changer on how you can then encourage people to do startup.
I want to probe more on what is special in Hong Kong. So you have been there, you know the ecosystem very well. You have traveled in the Greater Bay Area, so you are familiar with the advantages of each location. What is there in Hong Kong that makes it a special place?
I think first is they have like a very systematic ecosystem. So say each university, they have their own entrepreneurship center, right, which essentially incubate projects coming from the professors' work, that you work with the students. And then after that, so usually they will encourage you to go to the Hong Kong Science Park, right? So after you're being funded by each university entrepreneurship center, and then they can say, okay, you go to the Hong Kong Science Park, they're gonna give you more, right? So they're gonna be your first, they call it the pre-incubation, they give us 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. And then give us some sort of like start for hiring interns and talents. And then after you finish this, you do incubation. So it's like, they already have like a very systematic, no, I wouldn't say game, but like sort of like, okay, if you do this, it unlocks this. If you do this, it unlocks this. So it helps clueless people like me or clueless students that doesn't even know how to commercialize a research into a product to actually know, okay, I wouldn't know it now, but if I follow them, I can get there. So I think that's sort of like a nice thing that I feel like that guidance of, okay, I feel the incubation, they give me 1.3 million Hong Kong dollars. So that's the incubation program by the Hong Kong Science Park, right? If I do this, that's an acceleration program. And along the way, there will be more events that they will ask you to go to, training, workshops that obviously expose you to more people. And when you meet more people, that's where I learn, right? So that's, I wouldn't say that I learn everything from the workshops. Some of them I also skip it. But when you meet more people, that's I think where the real learning is happening. I think that is a very, very key on what I can see in the Hong Kong ecosystem that helps people or students to even just study, researching, and then to actually think how to develop a commercial product.
Many of the students are not necessarily from Hong Kong, right? They come from different countries. Does the ecosystem give preference for the Hong Kong residents, or they treat all of them equally? What's your experience about attracting talent?
Yeah, I think obviously when I first started, it's mostly local. So probably I was just one of the very crazy ones that thinking like I can make it. So, but now it's more and more international students actually pursuing this path. So, which is good. And I think in terms of the diversity, is very, very welcoming because every program, at least in Hong Kong, is run in English. So I think for me, even though I've been in Hong Kong for 11 years, my Cantonese, my Chinese aren't that good as well, right? So if we go to Shenzhen, all the programs are run in Chinese, for example, right? So obviously it wouldn't be that friendly for international students. But in Hong Kong, everything is more in English. Obviously, there are some advantage if you can speak the local languages, because then there's some partners that they have something they can't speak English, right? So yes, it might have some advantage if you can speak the local, but I wouldn't say that's a deal breaker for international students.
My last question before I open the floor is about funding. What's your experience about accessing funding and pitching to venture capital? How difficult it is to find investors in Hong Kong?
It's very difficult. I wouldn't say it's easy. So, especially because in Hong Kong, fintech, I think would definitely be the major industry. So there are a lot of VCs, there are a lot of the investors are so accustomed with a fintech that you can predict like a clear ROI. Okay, you launch this, this is like the metric you need to hit, and this is the money that you can get, and what's the ROI look like, right? But the thing with us, with deep tech, biotech, it's very difficult. It's a very R&D based, a lot more failure chance happening, and it's something that they're probably not familiar or aware of how you should project the financials as well, right? So if I put you, say, $1 million in the US, then how is it? Is it going to be a launchable product, or you just finish clinical trials? Because this kind of thing is a very different game compared to software business. The software business, once you launch it, once you finish the development, test it, and then you can launch it. But with hardware, you need to figure out the manufacturing. After you finish the manufacturing, can it be shipped? Can it be scalable? What's the quality like? What's the QC like? Because this kind of thing is definitely need a lot more capital and a lot more experience in running a supply chain. So I would say in this area, the fees are definitely not too much exposure or willingness to take the risk. And not to mention with drugs, right? So like the hardcore biotech is, I would say ourselves is more in the middle. So yes, we're doing biotech, but at the same time not that level of like drugs or therapeutic treatment for cancer and all that, right? So we're in the middle. So actually our investors is Singapore-based fund, actually. So, but of course it's referred from the Hong Kong family office. So I think from my experience for the past 4 or 5 years, it's definitely not easy. So you can think of it, after 4 or 5 years, this is our first time closing our private round. So then the past 3-4 years is really relying on the government grants. So I think that is the landscape of the investments right now. So if you go to Silicon Valley, I'm pretty sure you knock one door and say, oh, I want to make something crazy, they will give you the money. Right? Because in Silicon Valley, it's really the other way around. They really want to put a big bet on something they think is crazy, and sometimes it pans out as well. So something is really different, I'd say, culture as well. What happening in the Silicon Valley does not mean it's replicatable in Asia. But I think having this ecosystem like this is something that also can't be replicated in the US as well. So I think it has pros and cons, but over 4 or 5 years, I'd say the fundraising, of course, it's the difficult part.
Good. So let's open the floor for questions in the audience.
Anyone has any questions?
Yes, Kenny, thank you for sharing. Very interesting. I think there are 2 aspects of interest for us. One is actually your company and the product, and the other one is how did you make it happen? So I have 2 questions actually. One relating to the first. I didn't quite get what actually result of parameters you will receive out of this device. So what is my benefit using it, and what numbers will I be seeing?
So firstly, right now, our first focus product is called for continuous lactate monitoring. So lactate is like a biomarker when we're running out of oxygen, right? So that's usually people need to bring blood to test the blood lactate, and usually if you use the blood lactate meter, it will say in millimole per liter, right? So essentially, knowing the very easy way is like if you reach 4, essentially your body's already getting tired, right? So But the thing is, like, if you want to test it right now, you need to stop, and your coach is to break your earlobes to get that number. But with our device, you can get it directly with your watch. Oh, I'm already 40, so I gotta slow down. Or oh, I want to sprint more. Because when you run marathon, you don't want to be gassed out in the first 20 kilometers, right? You want to pace yourself until the 42 kilometers. You can still have enough energy to run at the same pace, right? So having real-time monitoring allows you to pace yourself, so that you don't get cramped, for example. You don't force yourself in the beginning and then slow down at the end. So at the end of the day, it's really about how real-time monitoring can allow you to pace and then adjust how you should run. And firstly, you want to prevent injuries. So I think essentially that's the data that you can get.
So it's oxygen, basically, what you measure.
So it's called lactate. So oxygen is like so when you're running, so when you're jogging, for example, your body or exercise runs with oxygen, right? But when you're sprinting fast enough, your oxygen supply is not fast enough to your muscles. That's where your body needs to produce energy through lactate. So that's the simplest way to think about it, right? And when your body's producing through lactate, it can't be that long. So sometimes you can think of it as like a nitro. If you watch the Fast and Furious, you want to use your lactate in the last 2 kilometers, for example. You wanna stay in your aerobic zones, like the oxygen-based metabolism for most of your race kilometers, right? You want to keep your lactate for the last sprint, for example. Essentially, and knowing this metabolism change is essentially what our device can tell you.
Great, thank you. And the second question was with regards to the funding. I think the last question was very interesting to hear for all of us. So you seem to be very open with your accounts and the 15,000 Hong Kong dollars to start with. So at what stage and what different stages are you at, and how are you convincing? Because my understanding is it hasn't been launched right yet.
Yeah.
So what do you foresee on when are you launching it, and how do you convince these investors? I'm sure they want to have the timeline and so on. So how is that going to work out usually?
Yeah. So we just closed our seed round, and then essentially that money will be used heavily for manufacturing, scaling up, and then delivering to the pro consumers. So we will start the manufacturing actually as early as next week. So we'll start producing it this next week, and then hope to finish all the supply chain by September, and then we'll start delivering on the November or December. Because in cycling, they have like the off-season training in Mallorca in Spain in December. Usually that's where they're off-season, because this kind of months they're really busy with Tour de France, like Giro Italy. So essentially we can't essentially bother them at this time of month. So we're aiming to launch to the professionals in December. And then consumer, we hope to do it in 2027. So we're gonna go through gyms. So we partner with several gyms in Hong Kong, like DFT, DOP, and all those gyms, like Pure, for example. Because then it's easier for us to educate the product through PTs, right? So rather than me going to gym every single time talking about this, let your PT tell you about that. It's much more scalable way of education as well. So that's once we have that scale, that's where we're going to go to the consumers. Estimated right now around 2027 Q2. So of course, in our investor portfolio also have a gym called Bravo. It's one of the fast growing gym chain in Australia, and they've been opening chains in Singapore, Vietnam, and Taiwan. So hopefully they're also going to bring this in Hong Kong. So I think that's like our current launch plan. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Perhaps another question from the floor. Anyone?
There you go, Jeffrey. That's where-
Thank you very much, Professor Jose. Such an excellent questions. Not just because you're moderating the panel, but as well as it gives us a different perspective, because this is on the startup side, and as well as how to scale up and all that. And congratulations, Kenny. It's already your 6th anniversary and so in your point fit technology. So having started this particular company, and knowing that it takes around 6 to 7 years before you truly launch, and understanding that it was the ecosystem from Hong Kong that gives you this opportunity to push forward. I wonder what are your key takeaways for the other entrepreneurs, in case there's an entrepreneur here, apart from having entrepreneurs in this room, are those who are also heading up some of the associations for the entrepreneurship program. How do you actually break through that particular barrier? You keep on going from 50,000, 100,000, 3.5, and as well as not having the financial backing from your end to go through. So yeah, what would be your encouragement and key takeaway for the audience?
I think it may sound cliche, but it really is about you have to do something that you love, because otherwise it's just going to be so hard that you want to give up. I think because I like sports, I'm a huge NBA fan. My goal when I first started out this is like, I hope Steph Curry gonna wear one, right? So that's my first goal when I started this. But sooner or later, I realized it's not for team sports. In the beginning, it will be for runners and cyclists, which I recently started to know because our investor is French. So I started picking up about cycling and all that, like, and then. But sports is something that I like, and something that I can test it myself, something that I can invite my friends over to try out the products. It's a very young, energetic products, rather than, because our applications definitely can easily go to healthcare as well. Like if we go directly to medicals. But then if you think about it, it's going to be so hard for me to even collect data, partner with hospitals. The speed is not going to be as quick if I say, if I do this, I can invite my friends to run with me and test with me, right? So it really comes about the product and the passion that I'm having as well. I think that's what keeps me moving, even though there are tough times. But at the very least, I know like that's something that I want to use myself. The team want to use myself, because that's also how you're going to recruit people to work, right? Because if they can't even relate to what you do, they don't even care what the product is, it's just going to be even harder, and I probably would have given up in the beginning. So I think it's really about matching the product, the research that you are doing with something that you like and you yourself don't mind doing it. So if you ask me, I've been break like maybe 500 times over the past 6 years to trying to test this, whether this sweat device can actually be used comparing with blood. But now it's good, because now I have my team to actually do it instead of me. But in the beginning, it has to be me first, right? So I think that is essentially, and seeing how it grows, how it develops over time, and see the progress, even small progress, actually that's what keeps me moving. And then, yeah, I think that's essentially what.
Was there any moment that you thought about quitting, stopping?
Yeah, of course. I mean, not gonna lie, it's gonna be very tough. But I think when I thought of quitting, what I did usually is like, okay, I came back with a team, like the core team, my co-founders, okay, what are we gonna do now, right? What's the blocker? We're trying to break it down one by one. And yeah, fortunately we came through, we solved the blocker back then. And I think having co-founders itself is a very huge advantage. Like you can cheer yourself. Yes, solo founder is definitely not impossible, but I think what makes me here also from the support of your co-founding teams and then the whole team as well. So I think having those people to support you, stand by you in the hard times, I think that's what keeps you moving.
More questions?
Thank you, Kenny, for a very insightful presentation. And thank you, Professor Alves, for moderating this. Actually, so many questions, you know. For one thing, just a quick one, actually, whether is it patented or not? I think that's a key question. Okay,
yes.
Good. So my next question is, so it seems you're quite content-oriented, whether the thing works or not. And not too much, we don't hear much about the sales. So, for example, would you be tempted to sell to an insurance company who wants to push this to their clients?
Yes.
And then it will be, linked to insurance premium.
Exactly.
and privacy. So it becomes a double-edged sword, really whether it is useful, or maybe you want to sell it to Meta or to Google. Is it? Would you do that? And in terms of liability, there's a lot of lawyers in the room here. So if someone relies on this and drops dead afterwards because somehow it failed, they're gonna sue you left and right. So how do you deal with this? So this is maybe a bit of your distribution future to how to make actually lots of money out of this. That will probably be one of the goals. And on the liability and warranties. Thank you.
I think to address your first question in insurance, yes, I can say that because that's part of our strategy as well moving forward. So actually we were talking with Way of Life in Hong Kong. So they want to launch their sports part. Even the AIA, you guys probably use the AIA fatality, right? But how they encourage people right now is like 10,000 steps, for example. But that's easily cheated. Like you can buy a device from Taobao and then moving around, they can do 10,000 steps, right? But with our device, it actually do a real thing, like actually tells how is your health metabolism of whether, because that also helps. So you said you're healthy. If you encourage people to exercise, follow the training regime in PointFit app, for example, right? That helps the insurance company to weigh, okay, what's the risk and all that. So my answer is yes. So that's definitely a B2B2C model that we are exploring down the road. Not right now, but maybe later on when we come up with the insurance. And because exactly what you said, the liability has to be there. So we need to make sure the product accuracy has been tested well with the professionals. If it went well with the professionals, we know what the red flag benchmark is. Because essentially, those people who run Ironman, for example, that not only 42 kilometers, but also do swimming first, cycling first, if we can make sure those people are still alive after finishing those races, then I think we have confidence to help people finishing the marathon without being collapsed. I think because, we want to make sure, of course, some shit might happen as well, but that's part of all the products. Actually, we help products who might have some false reading, false diagnosis. I think that's part of the liability we need to put as well.
Thank you, Kenny. Perhaps the last question from the floor.
Hi, thank you, Kenny. One quick last question. I think Mr. Kai asked earlier, besides lactate, do you see the device going further into some other biomarkers that may be better for the general population versus very, very extreme specific sports?
Yes, so the good thing with, so talking about patents as well, so we have two patents. First is the material, like the transparent part, and the second is the sensing framework, right? Like the lines, the color that you see here is actually layers by layers chemicals that composition, like the Coca-Cola recipe, like those kind of things is also patented. And the second patent about the sensing framework itself is highly modular. So it's easy, if it works for one biomarker, we just need to change the chemical in the middle, essentially to detect other biomarkers for different applications. So that's what allows us to easily modulate the applications in the future. So right now, that's why we focus first on lactate, because that's the clear use case, and people break blood almost single time. So it's also a good start for us to do that first, and then after that we can expand it to other biomarkers. So we are still deciding what the next biomarkers we want to target, either cortisol, like stress hormone, or creatinine, which is essentially used for the kidney disease. So it's a good indicator for chronic kidney disease. So right now, if you want to test the creatinine, you need to go to a hospital and do urine test. But if you can do it at home, it helps people to talk to you in telehealth. Okay, this is my urine test, this is my creatinine test, and then what do you think? So we are still deciding, but the opportunity, how we make the device, we make sure it's easy for us to go to other applications.
Thank you, Kenny. Final question, because you are highly popular today. So.
Well, I had a two-step question. We just answered the first one, which is if it measures cortisol levels, but you intended to do it in the future. One of the questions is if you've thought of this application in neurodegenerative diseases. I've done some work in Parkinson and Alzheimer research. And one of the main causes of chronic diseases, especially neurodegenerative diseases, is chronic inflammation, which can be measured by chronic systemic high cortisol levels. With that, you can have a huge predictor of long-term diseases, because some of these diseases start up to 12 years before the first symptoms arise, when the brain's already 50% degenerate. Have you considered that approach to the neurodegenerative diseases?
Honestly, we haven't looked that deep for the neurodegenerative diseases. So right now, when we see cortisol, because cortisol itself is like a very stress response from the body. Right? It can be induced by many things, like even when you do exercise, even the athletes or sportsmen, they do cortisol for recovery. So of course, there are a lot more studies on how the cortisol is being generated from the body and how it's being related to diseases. I think that's definitely a very interesting approach or direction we're going to go to. But I think for us, when we decide on which biomarker we're going to do next, is on like, okay, who's going to use it and how we can penetrate this market. I think that's essentially how we're going to decide. Because yes, there are a lot of research about cortisol can be used for different any aspects actually, right? But then which one we're going to do first, which one we're going to tailor our user journey or product to that particular market, I think that will be the research that we need to do after this.